Hi there, this is Jonathan Ginsberg, and today I'd like to give you a case study about a recent disability case I tried in front of a judge involving a client with insulin-dependent diabetes and a kind of unique complication, gastroparesis, which is a severe abdominal pain complication, as well as probably more common complications, which would be neuropathy in the hands and the feet. And basically, this is an individual. He was a younger individual. He was 29 years old, currently 29 years old, and his onset date was a couple of years ago, so he was only 27. He was obviously a younger individual. He was a high school graduate, but he took special education classes. Although he can read and write, he's dyslexic, but he can read and write. He has a pretty good work history. He'd worked mostly in the auto service business. He'd worked for a rental car company and actually a car sales company. He was responsible for preparing the cars for sale on the lot. Those had come in on the trucks, and he would get them ready for sale. That's called being a porter at a car lot. He had worked as a security guard, worked in a stock room, fast food, and so forth. I thought one of the things I thought was actually interesting here was that several of the times when he was working, several of the years, he was doing two jobs. He might have been a cook and a stockroom worker at the same time. So he showed himself to be a pretty hard-working guy. He looked fairly healthy, 6 foot tall, 250 pounds, so he didn't look sick. But the medical record showed basically that he had been going to the doctor fairly continuously over the last really 3 years or so, complaining of just severe abdominal pain. There were a number of emergency room visits. He had had a number of studies where basically the doctors had identified this gastroparesis and some erosion in his esophagus and his gastric system. And again, episodes of extreme pain. He was very sensitive to various kinds of medication, and I think that the medical record was fairly compelling that he was seeking treatment and making complaints for this pretty significant problem. Now, I'll also tell you that there was some reference in the medical record where at least one of the doctors felt like there may have been some drug-seeking behavior, meaning that he had been given pain medication, and that one of the doctors felt like he was maybe being a little too anxious to get the pain medication. And that's always a problem in a disability case, because if a doctor indicates there's drug-seeking behavior or maybe exaggeration of symptoms, that has a way of kind of getting into the record and not getting out, and other doctors see it and it become a real problem. I think in this case it really wasn't, because there was only one doctor and there was some objective evidence of the problem, but I think that was something we had to get past. There was also some indication of, again, the neuropathy in the hands and the feet, but at the same time there was an indication that my client was not being particularly compliant with his diet, and it looked like he was not being really good about following the diet he had been given. So there was some things about this case that weren't 100%. Again, we had some suggestion of drug-seeking behavior. We had some indication that he was not following his diet, but nevertheless we had a pretty significant diabetic complication with the gastric problems, and we also had the neuropathy. And so my client testified about all these issues. I had him testify about, certainly with diabetics, it's very common. He had to go to the bathroom a lot. That's a work issue. That can be a problem. He talked about the effect of the pain medication on his reaction time. And he talked about how his gastric problems were so uncomfortable that when they were flaring up, that besides having to go to the bathroom a lot, that he was in such pain that he had a really difficult time maintaining attention and concentration. And we had support from the doctor. Again, we had a long, pretty continuous work history. So the judge in this case, I checked, and the judge in our case, who I knew before, tends to be more likely to approve cases than not. So I felt we had a pretty good argument. I gave him a really strong opening statement. My client testified. I did not bring up the whole drug-seeking behavior type of thing. I felt like sometimes you bring it up because some judges read the record very carefully. This judge, I know, tends to scan it, so I didn't really want to bring that up. The diabetic diet, again, I didn't bring that up. I figured let the judge address that if he felt like it was necessary to do so. But really the judge didn't ask that many questions. turned to the vocational witness and gave a hypothetical question that included most of the limitations that were brought out in testimony. The vocational witness testified that based on a person who would likely miss 3 or 4 days a month because of severe abdominal pain would not be able to go back to past work and really couldn't do anything else. So I think what made this case successful was, number one, we had a client with a really good work record, even 2 jobs at the same time. Judges find that very compelling. We had a person who continuously sought medical treatment, and there was certainly most of the doctors felt that he was being truthful, prescribed him fairly significant pain medications. The condition he's describing, the gastroparesis, is one that is a known complication of diabetes, and again, some people, it just can't be treated. And the neuropathy, again, which is a numbness in the hands and the feet, that's also a known complication of diabetes. And even if he started adhering to his diet, a lot of times the nerve damage is not reversible. So I felt like the judge believed that his condition was long enough lasting, that it was significant enough that he was really not going to be able to perform any kind of constructive work, competitive work, and the judge is going to go ahead and approve this case. So that's what happened in this particular diabetes case. Diabetes I've won a lot of diabetes cases, but again, it's usually where people are insulin dependent. They've got to have a pretty significant complication associated with it, and especially if it's something that's been since childhood. In this guy's case, it's been 14 years since he's been diabetic. The judge felt like that his condition was significant enough that he would not be able to work. So I hope that's been helpful. Again, this is Jonathan Ginsberg, and this is a case study about a recent diabetes case that I tried. We'll see you soon.